Hi, everyone. Here we are going to discuss a difficult question of SAT English, and we are going to learn a few important tips to answer difficult questions. Let me first of all talk about the tips very, very quickly. The first point is what is asked. Whenever you get such questions where there is a lot of information, uh, all the information given here is not of equal importance. What is the most important is what is asked. Number two, figuring out the evidence which tells it by using keywords. So when you read the question, you will be able to figure out what is the most important word which you should focus on. And the third point is use elimination rather than selection to get to the right answer. Okay, so 3 points: what is asked, look at the evidence, and use elimination rather than selection to answer the question. Let's quickly answer this question using these techniques. The first thing that we are going to check is what is asked. So let us see what is asked. Now, to get that, you should read the question first. So this part, let's see. Which choice best describes data from the graph that supports the student's assertion? So what is important is student's assertion, right? So what is the student's assertion here? Let's try to figure that out. Where is the student's assertion? Mostly the question would be either in the last line or in the first line, okay? So let me see. Here I see the word asserts. So this seems to be the most important part. And let's read the student's assertion. What is the student's assertion? The student says, or student asserts that while initial efforts at trade liberalization were shaped by Chinese firms' limited capital, so initially limited capital, this situation resolved during 2000s. So this problem of limited capital got resolved in 2000s. Now, this is most important here, that how the problem of capital got resolved. Now, I would like you to spend maybe a minute or so to look at the graph and the options here and figure out the answer yourself, right? So let me give you some time to read this information and figure out which answer do you think would be the right one. Okay, you can pause the video right now and figure out the answer yourself. Why don't you just check your own strategy first before we get to answer it together? I hope you paused it and you got your answer out of A, B, C, and D. If you haven't done it, pause it once again. The whole question is there in front of you. Try it first, and then you go for listening to the solution, which I am just going to discuss about. Okay, so we want to figure out how or what information from this graph tells that Chinese resolved their capital problem. Limited capital problem was resolved in 2000s. Let's see. Now, with that information, you can read the premise now and see what this graph is talking about, okay? So you can actually read the headings of these graphs first and then go about reading this. So I start reading the question. And while reading, pay attention to the important information, skip the words and the content which doesn't really contribute to the answer. So some student is researching the Chinese government's shift to a market economy that emphasizes liberalization. Well, Chinese government is looking for liberalization. Great. One means of trade liberalization involves expanding from ordinary inputs into emphasis on processing inputs. Okay. Ordinary to processing. I can see these words here. So there is a shift from ordinary inputs to processing inputs, but I see two processing inputs. What does it mean? Which have two types. So they are explaining it. What are the two types? The first is with assembly. As you can see the assembly word here. So with assembly, it is explaining what is it. Let's try to understand. In which a firm obtains raw materials from a foreign trading partner without payment. Oh, so, you can ask yourself, you're getting some raw material, but you are not paying anything, and sells the final product to that partner, charging for assembly. Oh, that's interesting. So you got some raw material from someone you assembled it and you gave it back to the one who gave you the raw material, which means you took the raw material, you made the assembly. Let's say you took iron from someone, made a bicycle, and gave the bicycle back to the one who gave iron to you. So that's what it is, processing with assembly. Okay, fantastic. So that's the thing. And you don't have to pay anything for the raw material in this case. And the second one is with inputs. What does it mean? So let's try to understand this. Firm expends capital to buy raw material. Oh, so you're spending some money to get the raw material. So which means Chinese government is spending some money to get the raw material from a trading partner, processes them into final goods and sells those goods to whichever trading partner it chooses. Now, this one seems to be interesting. And I see that expends capital. The word capital comes here for the first time, as you can see here. So, and this is what we wanted to prove, that they are shifting to, they solved the capital problem and they are shifting to an economy where capital is available and they spend capital to get whatever more earnings they want to get. So this seems to be the most interesting part of the whole question because it matches the keyword. Remember the second point I told, that look at the keyword. So it says that they spent some capital and they produced the good and then they sold it to any partner. It's again interesting. Look at this. Trading partner, from a trading partner, process into and sells those goods to whichever trading partner it chooses. So this is another difference, which means they have more freedom to sell it. Earlier, they were selling it to the person who gave the raw material. So in this case, you get some iron from in this case, you get iron from anybody. You make a bicycle and sell it to anybody. There's no limitation. So that's that. And we want to prove this point. We want to show how the graph tells that such kind of capital expenditure related liberalization happened where the Chinese were ready to spend money. So this is only in this inputs graph, the third one, where they are spending money to get the raw material, processing it and giving the output. So let's see. Now, instead of choosing the right answer, what we are going to do is we are going to find flaws or shortcomings in each of the options and throw that off. So let's see. So I hope you have done this question. If you want, you can still pause it and see which option gives you the right answer, and then you can tally with the answer later. The first option says processing imports with inputs were greater than both ordinary imports and processing imports with assembly in 2006. What is it? With inputs. With inputs means this third one. Were greater than both ordinary inputs. So this is ordinary inputs and processing with imports. Is it greater than both of them? Well, this is greater than this, but this is not greater than the first one. Ordinary inputs are still larger in numbers. So this is factually incorrect. And it doesn't support the view. It somehow tells it, but factually, I don't see this is larger than this. It is not larger. So A gone. B says from 2000 to 2006, processing imports with inputs rose much more sharply. Rose sharply means the slope. Then processing imports with assembly did. So it is comparing these two. Remember, processing with assembly means the Chinese government was not spending any money for the raw material. But here it says it was spending money for the raw material, processing it, and then whatever the finished good was, it was given to the whole world. So B pretty much tells the idea or supports the idea that Chinese resolved their capital problem in 2000s because they clearly moved from an arrangement where they were not paying anything for the raw material to an arrangement where they were paying for the raw material, which means they had that initial capital to spend and get the raw material. And then whatever finished good was produced was sold to any trading partner, not just the one from whom they got the raw material. So they could get raw material from, let's say, India, and whatever finished product is sold to, let's say, France. So raw material comes from India. Chinese people do whatever processing of inputs and they sell it to France. So initially they give some money to India to get the raw material. They make, they produce it, and they sell it to France, America, Japan, UK, whatever, wherever they want to. So this clearly shows that they solved the capital problem. If you look at C and D, you can further see that it doesn't make sense. And B is the one which answers the question directly. So these are some important points which I want you to emphasize while doing these questions. Number one, look at what is asked, right? There is so much of information, but focus on what is asked. Number two, focus on the keyword. Here, the keyword is capital, how they resolve the capital problem. And third point is focus on elimination rather than selection. Go for the, I mean, when you read the options, do not think it, how can it be right? Think, how can it be wrong? And eliminate the wrong choices and go to the right one. I've not discussed C and D, but you can figure out to read it by reading it, okay? And the most important thing, again, when you read these questions, do not go in sequence. You can always read the question first to understand what is asked. Like in this case, the question is stated where it is asking for the student's assertion. So read this part first, then read the part where student's assertion is mentioned, and then you can go about reading the rest of it. So these are some important points with regard to answering the questions of SAT. The database questions are a bit difficult or hard ones because there's so much of information, but if you stay focused and you do a lot of practice, you get around doing these questions fast. All the best to you. In case you are looking for any kind of support or any kind of quick preparation or diagnostic test, you can call us at this number and we can take a diagnostic test for you and help you prepare for SAT. We have participants who scored full marks in these tests and we can help you also to achieve your goals. All the best to you. Thank you so much.